We are in 1 Samuel chapter 20, if you have your Bible. I'm going to have the scripture on the screen, so I'll make sure you are kept up. But if you have an app and you want to follow along, it is in the New Living Translation. So that's what I'm reading out of. And I know I mentioned that different times. But 1 Samuel chapter 20, if you remember, David has escaped Saul. Jonathan stood up for him, which is Saul's son. Then Michal stood up with him, which is David's wife and Saul's daughter. And so now we're in 1 Samuel chapter 20. Now, before we jump back into the text, I want to ask you a question. How do we greet one another as Christians? With a holy kiss, that's right. That's right. We probably don't do that very often. We give each other handshakes. We give each other hugs. We do those kind of things. That is absolutely true. But do you know in the early church, there was a time when the church was persecuted. And in trying to deal with that and figure out who was a Christian without revealing who you were all the time, they had a special way of greeting one another. Anybody know what that is? That's right. But, which is called the ichthus. You see it on the back of cars quite often. But what I want you to understand about the fish is it wasn't just the fish. One person would draw half of the fish. The other person, if they were a Christian, would draw the completion of the fish, the other half. And so I just want you to understand there was this communication. Hey, I'm a Christian. I want you to know I'm a Christian. And so we're going to do this ichthus, this fish outline here. Because they were trying to live without the threat of persecution, or at least trying to protect each other from persecution. Well, that's what we're going to witness tonight with David and Jonathan. Jonathan specifically is trying to protect David from persecution from his own father. And they, in fact, come up with a secret plan. It isn't drawing a fish, but we're going to look at it tonight. And it's going to communicate, as we look at it tonight, not only how they interact with each other, but we're also going to see how far Saul's hate for David has grown. How far Saul's hate for David has grown. So, 1 Samuel 20, the first 3 verses, let's go ahead and read them. It says, David now fled from Naioth in Ramah and found Jonathan. What have I done? He exclaimed. What is my crime? How have I offended your father that he is so determined to kill me? That's not true, Jonathan protested. You're not going to die. He always tells me everything he's going to do, even the little things. I know my father wouldn't hide something like this from me. It just isn't so. Then David took an oath before Jonathan and said, your father knows perfectly well about our friendship, so he has said to himself, I won't tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him? But I swear to you that I am only a step away from death. I swear it by the Lord and by your own soul. All right. David starts off with this question of Jonathan. What is David's question? What have I done? What have I done? Why does your dad want to kill me? What's so important or so powerful about this question? I mean, we can see, in fact, we know, but David is implying in the question, hey, I've done nothing wrong. I've done nothing wrong. All I've ever been to your dad is loyal. So why is it that Saul wants to kill me? It made me think about something. There's a huge truth here in this question. And I want to fill you in on this huge truth. Here it is. When you and I live our lives trusting in Jesus and walking with the Lord, others may hate us and want to remove us simply for that fact. If you live your life trusting Jesus, walking with the Lord, others might just simply hate you for that reason alone. No other reason, not that you did anything wrong, not that you caused any issue, not that you were a problem, but they may hate you just because you live for Jesus. In fact, we see that throughout Scripture. We've read them many times before. I just want to focus on two that Peter talks about. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 14, if you are insulted because you bear the name of Christ, you will be blessed, for the glorious Spirit of God rests upon you. Now, I just want you to recognize, by the way, the next verse, which we're not going to read, but the next verse, it says something to the effect, now, don't be insulted because you did something wrong. It's not because you're suffering for doing something wrong. But what he's saying is if you're suffering because you're living for Christ, look at it as a blessing. The chapter before that, this is what he says. Chapter 3. But even if you suffer for doing what is right, God will reward you for it. So don't worry or be afraid of their threats. Instead, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks you about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. I love what he says. And I'm not sure we always do this. But Peter reminds us that when you're in the midst of being persecuted, especially for Jesus, Jesus doesn't just want you and me to endure the insult. Now, we need to endure the insult. But that's not it. It's not just endure it, just get through it, just handle the persecution, take it on your back and make your way through it. No, what he wants us to do is respond in worship, thankfulness, and rejoicing. He wants us to respond in such a way that our lives and hopefully our words speak of the good news that we are participating in. It's not enough to just handle it. We need to respond with worship and rejoicing, and hopefully that gives us the opportunity to share the good news with other people. So I find it interesting. David's like, what have I done? But the Christian, we can say that too. What have I done? What have I done to deserve that? What have I done to deserve this? Well, instead of feeding into that, complaining about it, and being upset about it, embrace it, be thankful, rejoice, be joyful, and share the good news. Share the good news. Now, why does Jonathan say, oh, my dad's not going to kill you? Oh, you're essentially saying, David, you're wrong. It's not what dad's going to do. Why would Jonathan think that? A chapter back, he had got Saul to promise what? I'm not going to kill David. I'm not going to kill David. So he got his dad to promise that. So maybe he's thinking, even if my dad gets mad at David again, I'll be able to talk him off the cliff. I'll be able to talk him back down and settle this thing. I don't know. I'm not sure. But that's what it seems like to me. Now, David goes ahead and takes an oath. He's like, listen, I'm telling you, your dad's trying to kill me. And he takes his oath to proclaim that. And how does he describe the predicament he's in with Jonathan? There's this phrase I think is extremely important. This is what he says. It's in the 3rd verse. He says, but I swear to you, I am only a step away from death. I'm a step away from death, he says. What makes that description so interesting? Because we're all a step away from death. That's exactly right. We're all absolutely one step away from death, all of us. We have no guarantee of our next breath, our next hour, our next day, our next year, none of it. Step away, one step. In fact, I would remind you, when you cross the road, look both ways. One step. One step. That's how all of us should be living, to be quite honest. I know David is expressing the urgency of the situation he's in, but in so doing, he actually is describing the very existence we all live in every single moment. One step away. One step away. One day, my dad is out there leading this men's group, Cap Topawingo. Everything's going great. Next morning he gets up, takes a walk, praying, and he drops dead. One step. By the way, my mind, this is what I see. Him talking to God right now, like me, having this conversation with the Lord and finishing it face to face. That's what I see. But one step. That's the same for you. That's the same for me. We are all living in that exact same place. In James 4, verse 14, how do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, then it's gone. I heard someone sent me a little video clip, a short, about, I think it was Joby Martin. He's a preacher, but he was describing, and this is what he said. He said, for a Christian living right now, we are as close to hell as we're ever going to get. For a non-Christian living right now, they're as close to heaven as they're ever going to get. Unless they change, But his point is, there's an eternity that we need to be looking at all the time. And as Christians, we should be emboldened and motivated by the fact that we only have a short amount of time to accomplish what God's given us on this earth to do. And if we don't know Jesus Christ, the same urgency ought to motivate us to recognize, hey, I need to do something about my eternity because I'm just a step away at any moment. Jesus was describing his work in John 9. He says, we must quickly carry out the task assigned to us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I'm here in the world, I am the light of the world. Listen, we have a short amount of time, all of us. I don't care how long you live, it's still a short amount of time compared to eternity. And by the way, just compared to life, as you get older, guess what you find out? Years are like this. You're like, what in the world just happened? How did I just become a decade older? I'm like, I don't know what the deal is. How did that happen? While we're here as Christians, we are supposed to be shining just like Jesus was shining. We need to do all the shining we possibly can while we can. All right, 4 through 11. Tell me, what can I do to help? Jonathan exclaimed. David replied, tomorrow we celebrate the new moon festival. I've always eaten with the king on this occasion, but tomorrow I'll hide in the field and stay there until the evening of the third day. If your father asks where I am, tell him I asked permission to go home to Bethlehem for an annual family sacrifice. If he says, fine, you will know all is well. But if he's angry and loses his temper, you will know he is determined to kill me. Show me this loyalty as my sworn friend, for we made a solemn pact before the Lord. Or kill me yourself if I've sinned against your father. Please don't betray me to him. Never, Jonathan exclaimed. You know that if I had the slightest notion my father was planning to kill you, I would tell you at once. Then David asked, how will I know whether or not your father is angry? And we're going to pick up, actually we just read through 10. So we're going to pick up through 11. I want to ask you a question. David says, your dad's trying to kill me. He's wanting to take me out. How does Jonathan respond to that? All right. Now, here's the kicker. Jonathan does not believe his dad is trying to kill David. He already told him that. But how does he respond to his friend who says, no, he is trying to kill me? That's right. He jumps in there and says, you know what? I tell you what, I'm going to do anything I possibly can to bring you peace in this situation. Listen, Jonathan doesn't believe that. But he still doesn't downplay David's concern about it. He doesn't do that. He wants to know exactly what he can do to help. And he says, I'm going to do anything I can to help. I love that about Jonathan. How often do we downplay someone else's problems and then we don't ever even get involved in them? Come on, that's no big deal. What's wrong with you? And then we don't act like we care at all. That's not what Jonathan does. Jonathan says, okay, all right, that's what you believe. I don't believe it, but that's what you believe. I'm going to do anything and everything I can to bring you peace. By the way, Jesus says in Matthew 5:9, he says, God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. James, talking about peacemakers, he says, and those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. I can't tell you how easy it is for us to become dismissive of other people's concerns instead of trying to bring them peace. Look, you don't even have to say, I don't believe that. All you can say is, okay, I'm going to pray about that. I'm here for you. What can I do to help? Sometimes all we can do is help someone in their perceived issue, problem. That may not actually be that big a problem, but that's what they see it as. So instead of trying to say, well, it's not a big problem, maybe what we ought to say is, how can I help you with that? What can I do to give you some relief in that? By the way, our only true lasting peace is found where? In Jesus. That's right, Jesus. John 14, that's Jesus. That's what he says. I'm leaving you this with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. So I'm giving you peace. One of my favorite passages of Scripture, and you know you hear me say that all the time, but another one, Philippians 4. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he's done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. You and I, we need to be peacemakers and peace bringers to people's lives. That's what we need to do that. We need to show people, hey, Jesus is our peace. If you're struggling, even if I don't quite understand it, I want to be part of the peace bringing rather than the trying to convince you you're wrong clan. Now, if it's sin, now we're in a different ballgame, and we'll talk about that another time. But all right, by the way, what is David's plan? All right, there, that's it. He says, hey, we're getting ready to do the New Moon Festival, and I'm not going to go. And if Saul asks about me, you tell him that I went to be with my family because they asked me to, and then you judge his response. If he's calm and he's, oh yeah, no problem, David needed to be with his family, then he's not mad. But if he gets angry, then he's trying to kill me. That's his plan. By the way, what's this New Moon Festival? Is it like what you used to do on the school bus when cars drove by? No, that's not. No, it is. You've got to understand that the Jewish people lived differently than we do. Their calendar was based differently, like on the lunar cycles. So new moon was a new start of the month. It happened every single month. They had a new moon, and they had this banquet. And so David knows that every single month they're going to have this, and it's coming up. And so he says, we're going to see what happens here. All right. By the way, just a side, I mentioned this last week. Why didn't they just tell the truth? That's what I think. And there may be some reasons I'm not seeing, and that's fine because I wasn't in the situation, and I'm not God, so I don't see everything, that's for sure. But I wonder what would have happened if David didn't show up and Saul asked, where's David, to Jonathan, and Jonathan says, oh, he didn't come because he's scared you're trying to kill him. What would have been the difference? I don't know. That's just a thought. Has nothing to do with our lesson necessarily, except for the fact that you and I need to communicate to one another truthfully. Just be truthful. All right, 11 through 17. Come out to the field with me, Jonathan replied, and they went out there together. Then Jonathan told David, I promised by the Lord and the God of Israel, that by this time tomorrow or the next day at the latest, I will talk to my father and let you know at once how he feels about you. If he speaks favorably about you, I will let you know. But if he is angry and wants to kill you, may the Lord strike me and even kill me if I don't warn you, so you can escape and live. But may the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father. And may you treat me with the faithful love of the Lord as long as I live. But if I die, treat my family and with this faithful love, even when the Lord destroys all your enemies from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a solemn pact with David, saying, may the Lord destroy all your enemies. And Jonathan made David reaffirm his vow of friendship again, for Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. Why did they need to go out into the field to have this discussion? All right. Here's the kicker. If you are plotting against the king, who do you not want to find out about that? The king. And by the way, anyone else. Because if anyone else hears about it, there's a good possibility it's getting back to the king. That is let's go out to the field. Why? Because they want to protect themselves as best as they can. This is not a casual, light conversation that you're just having willy-nilly. This is, we got to get away from any kind of listening ears there ever were. Now, what does Jonathan promise to do? All right. Yeah, he says, listen, I'm going to talk to my father. I'm going to find out his true intentions. I'm going to let you know. As soon as I find out, I'm going to let you know. Now, by the way, we've been talking about the fact that we believe that Jonathan understood that David was going to be the king, and that was going to mean that he wasn't going to be the king, and his father was going to be dethroned as king. But I want you to understand, this text makes it even more clear. It's pretty clear that Jonathan recognized David is going to be the next king. In fact, what I find interesting is that him thinking David is probably going to be the next king or is going to be the next king is what it looks like to me. But who does he lump into his oath? His own father. Think about that. He says, I want all of your enemies. May the Lord destroy all of your enemies. What Jonathan essentially is saying is, if my father turns out to be trying to kill you, what is he actually wanting God to do? Take him out too. That is a hard oath to take. But that's what he says. Now, what does Jonathan ask David to promise of him? So he promised, I'm going to come back and tell you. What's he want David to promise him? Yeah. Jonathan essentially says, I want you to love me like you promised to, and my family. If I die, love them too. You know, love us both. By the way, that David does that. 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 7, it says, don't be afraid, David said. I intend to show kindness to you because of my promise to your father, Jonathan. I will give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will eat here with me at the king's table. So when David comes into contact with Jonathan's son, he says, oh, I'm not going to kill you. Nope. In fact, I'm going to restore you, and you're going to eat with me. You're going to be at the king's table, which is a place of honor. So David does keep his promise, and Jonathan keeps his promise as well. We're going to look at that here right now. 18 through 23. Then Jonathan said, tomorrow we celebrate the new moon festival. You will be missed when your place at the table is empty. The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid before and wait there by the stone pile. I will come out and shoot 3 arrows to the side of the stone pile as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a boy to bring the arrows back. If you hear me tell him, they're on this side, then you will know, as surely as the Lord lives, that all is well and there is no trouble. But if I tell him, go farther, the arrows are still ahead of you, then it will mean that you must leave immediately, for the Lord is sending you away. And may the Lord make us keep our promises to each other, for he has witnessed them. Again, we have secret codes and subterfuge, and we're thinking to ourselves, why all the secrecy? Well, again, you're trying to trick the king. You do not want the king to find out about it. But it did make me think about this. Are there things we ought to keep secret? Now, there are probably things you can keep secret, that's fine. But are there things you should keep secret? From who? Everyone.
You can't keep everything secret from you.
Well, there's nothing. Being secretive as far as the Lord's concerned is an impossibility for us. But what about everyone else? Huh? All right. All right. I'm sure there are some specific instances or different instances or maybe many instances where we don't want to necessarily say everything or broadcast everything or give everyone insight into every single element of our life. But I started to think, are there things we're supposed to keep secret? And I realized, yes, there are. There actually are. Now, they have nothing to do with Jonathan and David. This was just a side excursion. I'm like chasing a rabbit, but you're chasing him with me. Here we go. They're all found. The ones I could think about were in Matthew chapter 6. Here they are. But when you give to someone in need, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Give your gifts in private, and your Father who sees everything will reward you. What are you supposed to do? Keep your generosity secret. 5 and 6, but when you pray, don't be like hypocrites who love to pray publicly on the street corners and the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you. What does Jesus say we're supposed to keep secret? Our prayer life. Now, does that mean all prayers? No. That's not necessarily what he's saying, but what was the problem with those who were praying out for everyone to see? Because that's why they were doing it, for everyone to see. They want everyone to see it. By the way, be very cautious about that when you're praying out loud in front of someone, that you're not thinking to yourself, how do they hear this? As much as I'm talking to God. I'm conversing with my Heavenly Father. I grew up when they used to use a lot of these phrases. I'm not a big phrase kind of guy. I think we need to steer clear of those because they have a tendency to lead us into this trap of being heard by others rather than by God. If you don't normally say something in your speech pattern, you might not want to pray that way. I don't know if you have like precious faith or not. In fact, I would submit to you that if I ask you to define what like precious faith is, you may not even know what in the world they're talking about. But I remember as a child that was used over and over and over and over. Almost every prayer I heard was like precious faith. We can discuss what like precious faith means afterwards. 16 through 18, same chapter. And when you fast, I want to pause right here. Who's speaking? Jesus. What does he say? When you fast. I'm just giving that to you. I'm not going to define that to you any more than that. When is what he says. Here we go. When you fast, don't make it obvious as the hypocrites do, for they try to look miserable and disheveled so people will admire them for their fasting. I tell you the truth, that is the only reward they'll ever get. But when you fast, comb your hair and wash your face, then no one will notice that you are fasting except your Father who knows what you do in private. And your Father who sees everything will reward you. David and Jonathan are doing things in secret, coming up with secret codes and plans to protect themselves from Saul's spies in the kingdom and Saul himself. But Jesus says, do these things in secret to protect ourselves from ourselves, our pride. All right, went off that trail, coming back to the text. Here we go. 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon festival began, the king sat down to eat. He sat at his usual place against the wall, with Jonathan sitting opposite him and Abner beside him. But David's place was empty. Saul didn't say anything about it that day, for he said to himself, something must have made David ceremonially unclean. But when David's place was empty again the next day, Saul asked Jonathan, why hasn't the son of Jesse been here for the meal either yesterday or today? Jonathan replied, David earnestly asked me if he could go to Bethlehem. He said, please let me go, for we are having a family sacrifice. My brother demanded that I be there, so please let me get away to see my brothers. That's why he isn't here at the king's table. Saul boiled with rage at Jonathan. You stupid son of a whore, he said, or he swore at him. Do you think I don't know that you want him to be king in your place, shaming yourself and your mother? As long as the son of Jesse is alive, you'll never be king. Now go and get him so I can kill him. But why should he be put to death? Jonathan asked his father. What has he done? Then Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. So at last, Jonathan realized that his father was really determined to kill David. Jonathan left the table in fierce anger and refused to eat on the second day of the festival, for he was crushed by his father's shameful behavior toward David. The passage gets a little earthy there, I realize. What's the result of David and Jonathan's plan? Well, they do. They discovered Saul's actual intent. They know that Saul wants to kill David. By the way, David's not there, so what does Saul do? Tries to kill Jonathan. He's already done this to David a couple times. He's already done this. But now he's trying to do it to Jonathan. By the way, how bad of a shot does he have to be? He's missed 3 times now. This guy, he's not too good at it. By the way, one other thing, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this anger thing, but one other thing, notice that Saul does not use David's name. What does he say? Son of Jesse. He says that a couple times. He can't even stomach saying his name out loud. He won't do it. So back to the anger. He's angry at David, but because Jonathan is protecting David, Jonathan, his own son, he not only swears at him and defames his mother, but he tries to kill him. In Ephesians chapter 4, this is what it says. And don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. Anybody ever have a problem with anger? I'm like Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner says, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry, because he turns into the Hulk. In case you didn't know who Bruce Banner was. Unaddressed, uncontrolled anger allows Satan to be in control of you. I want you to understand that. If we do not control our anger, Satan controls us with our anger. It is a tool that he uses to destroy and divide. It is a tool that he uses to break families apart and relationships apart and churches apart. And if we don't control our anger, it eventually boils over. And it will hurt the ones we love. That's what happens. So I just want to encourage you, if you've got anger issues, please address them, pray about them, find help for them, but don't let them go unchecked. All right, let's read the end of the whole rest of the chapter. The next morning, as agreed, Jonathan went out to the field and took a young boy with him to gather his arrows. Start running, he told the boy. By the way, I just want to stop here for a minute. Jonathan is getting ready to shoot arrows, and what does he tell the boy who's going to pick up the arrows to do? Start running. What? I'll shoot over your head, no problem. He's got to get out. When I used to shoot bow and arrow a little bit, and when we did that, we never let anybody out in front of us. They were supposed to always be behind us. But apparently not in their day. They're like, get out there, boy. Start running. He told the boy, so you can find the arrows as I shoot them. Whew. So the boy ran, and Jonathan shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy had almost reached the arrow, Jonathan shouted, the arrow is still ahead of you. Hurry, hurry, don't wait. Who's he talking to, by the way? David. So the boy quickly gathered up the arrows and ran back to his master. He, of course, suspected nothing. Only Jonathan and David understood the signal. Then Jonathan gave his bow and arrows to the boy and told him to take them back to town. As soon as the boy was gone, David came out from where he had been hiding near the stone pile. Then David bowed 3 times to Jonathan with his face to the ground. Both of them were in tears as they embraced each other and said goodbye, especially David. At last, Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for we have sworn loyalty to each other in the Lord's name. The Lord is the witness of a bond between us and our children forever. Then David left, and Jonathan returned to the town. What is the result of their covenant together? To one another, I should say. What is their result? What? They both fulfilled their word. They both fulfilled it. Now, David has to fulfill it in a while, although he's been fulfilling it, but I'm just saying it. We see it fulfilled later as well. But they are now going to be out of each other's lives. In fact, this is the very last time they see each other ever. This is it. This is it. Why is this it? Because Jonathan gets killed in battle. Jonathan gets killed in battle. Now, interestingly enough, Jonathan comes to David, and he's just warned him that his dad Saul is trying to kill him. But what does he tell him to do? He says, go in peace. What? Go in peace. Hey, my dad's trying to kill you. Go in peace. What is that? What is he talking about? Well, we don't have to make it too hard. What he's really saying is, listen, you and I have peace. We're at peace with one another. We have the peace of knowing that the Lord's got this. That's essentially what he's saying. There's no hard feelings here. There's no animosity here. You go in peace, because we're good. We're good. Me and you, we're good. Now, his father and you, not so good. But you and me, we're good. Yes?
I just always thought it was funny that he has this show of arrows and then he just talks to David.
Yes.
Why couldn't he just chat?
Yes, that is true. I thought about that too. And the only thing I can come up with, by the way, is that they do the arrow thing, and Jonathan's like looking around. He's like, well, there ain't nobody out here. Plus, I think Jonathan also knows this may be the last time I see David. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to have one final goodbye to my friend. But yes, I did. I was like, what? Why go to all this secret code, and then you're just going to walk up there and talk to him? But that's what he does do. By the way, this is what I thought as I'm preparing. I'm thinking, why didn't Jonathan just go with David? Okay, he knows his dad's going to kill David, or try to. He knows that David is the anointed next king. Why not just go with David? Well, the Bible never tells us. We're not told for sure. But it seems to me, this is just Todd, but it seems to me that Jonathan felt the best way he could protect David is to go back to his father's kingdom so he could be there in the midst of what's going on, so he could help. Jonathan, in my opinion, is almost sacrificing himself for the good of David at that moment. It reminded me of what Jesus says in John 15. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. I want to leave you with a couple questions. Here they are. These are what came to my mind. How far would you and I go to see God's will accomplished? I mean, think about that. That's what Jonathan's doing. I mean, he's putting his life on the line to go back. How far would you and I go to see God's will, God's purpose for his people, God's kingdom flourish? How far would we go? What do we take off the table? Is there anything that we're going to hold back from God? That's the first question. Second question is, who or what will you sacrifice everything for? What will you sacrifice for?